Hello, welcome to CST316. My name is Kevin Gary. I'm an associate professor here at Arizona State University. I am on the software engineering program faculty. I've been on this faculty for 12 years as a tenure track now tenured member of the faculty. And prior to that, I was teaching courses here as I worked in industry since 2001. The purpose of this initial video is simply to introduce the course and introduce myself to you. This is the first time I'm developing an online course. I have taught online a previous section of CST100. Perhaps some of you are in it. But this is the first time developing my own material, recording my own material. The material for the course has been developed for some time. I've taught this course 12 years running, so I'm quite familiar with it. And of course, there's been some evolution of the content over the um, the history of this course and of the courses you are taking. I'm not sure how much you are aware. You've been taking courses that have been titled Software Enterprise. You have what's called a professional spine or project spine of these courses. SCR215, SCR216, CST315, CST316 this course, and then SCR415 and SCR416. The software enterprise sequence, or spine as we're calling it, was something that I designed and conceived for the curriculum. It's in contrast to how software engineering is normally taught. Normally there are courses dedicated to a phase of the software lifecycle: requirements, design, verification, validation, and so forth. And while we have courses themed in those areas, our courses are all done in a project-based context so that you get an integrated, contextualized experience. In other words, you learn how to apply the things, the concepts that you're being taught just in time as you learn them. Because in software engineering, and you certainly learn this with experience, it isn't a dogmatic discipline. It is not something that you learn a specific technique like how to write a use case like you did last semester, or how to create a component diagram like you did last semester or last class. Um, uh, these things are applied in the context of a team, a project, an environment, a setting, collaborators, customers, um, and in that context, you have to understand how they can be best utilized. For that reason, we introduced this project spine, this project-based way of doing things. It is interesting to bring that to an online setting where your collaborators on a team are not folks that you sit with face to face. But this is not too different from how the direction things go in the real world. I still spend some time consulting and very often working with offshore resources, distributed resources, telecommuters, and the like, working over WebEx, working over Skype, working with remote desktops, working with collaborative tools that you'll work with. So I think it's very timely that we take and put a project-based curriculum and talk about software construction in particular in this course in a, if you will, distributed and asynchronous setting. A little bit about myself. I mentioned some things already. From a software engineering research perspective, I'm active in web and mobile technologies, agile and open source, mobile health applications, and in general software engineering and healthcare, uh, as well as software engineering education and e-learning. These interests derive in part from an industry background where I was a software architect, as well as just kind of where my students lead me. I'm a director of the HEAL Lab, HEAL, heal.asu.edu, where we do mobile health applications. I currently have PhD and master's students working in these areas. We tend to work empirically. We tend to build software, test it, try it, and see how it applies and discover new knowledge as we go. Um,
From a teaching perspective, I teach in the software enterprise spine. As I said, I conceived of these courses. I've taught all the junior and senior courses at one time or another. This particular course you are taking, CST316, is my favorite course to teach. I do believe as a software engineer that you know how you write code and the low-level quality development practices are important. Not everybody emphasizes that. Some people think software engineering is about everything but the coding. But I believe um, that the code is the product. That is the central thing that we contribute. And so understanding how to write quality code, how to work within a team, how to translate requirements into code, that these things are critically important, and those are the themes of this course, as I'll talk about when I review the syllabus. I also teach in the web and mobile area. Focus area. Those courses, the courses I teach in particular right now, SCR 421 and SCR 422, will be going online as well in the next year. So perhaps I'll see you again if that's your focus area. And as I said, I spent a lot of time in industry and my research developing web applications, developing mobile applications, and the like. And then there's some courses at the graduate level as well that I won't talk about here. What I'm going to do in terms of the videos in the class and the like, I'm going to keep the videos relatively short, meaning 10 minutes or less. That tends to help us manage the file sizes for them, tends to help you manage your attention span as well as any disruptions in your connection. It seems to be a nice bite-sized chunk for me to record in. So what you'll see in this course is kind of a week-by-week progression of different quality practices that I will refer to as modules. And those modules will be presented as a collection of 10-minute videos, however long it takes to get through them. I don't have a preset number of videos I will post. It depends on the nature of that material. I can tell you I've taught this course for 12 years, so I have a fairly good idea of the scope of the content. Also, I am teaching a face-to-face version of this course concurrently with the online course, although that goes for 15 weeks. So my lecture materials in front of the face-to-face students are timed at 100 minutes, two 50-minute sections. I don't expect to post 10-minute videos every single week. I expect this content will go faster, largely because when not sitting in front of you, there tends to be, there's not an interaction, there's not a set of questions that come about as I'm speaking, like there is in my face-to-face classes. That will be replaced by use of the discussion forums on Blackboard. In fact, I've already posted some scaffolding for the nature of discussions on the modules. So expect that that's how we'll kind of run things. I would anticipate 4 to 5 videos a week to get through the lecture content. Plan on watching them in bite-sized chunks, those 10-minute chunks. Plan on having readings assigned that go along with those modules every week. In fact, normally the readings are something I expect that you've done before you watch the videos, not after. Additionally, every week that we do a module, there will be an associated lab exercise. The lab exercise will be done in part with pencil and paper, and I'll talk about that, as well as some things done in software tools that you actually have to run, capture your output, capture your results, and submit these things through Blackboard. All right. That's by way of introduction. The next video, I'll get a bit more specific. I will go into the syllabus. I will go into Blackboard. I will talk about some of the course policies, and I'll try and share some tips for success. Okay, this is the second video for CST316 Software Enterprise 2 Construction and Transition. The intent of this video is to go over the kind of the logistics of the course, starting with the syllabus, reviewing the Blackboard site, and additional course policies. So let's get right to it. On the Blackboard site, if you go to it, you will see a link, course documents.
on the left-hand navigation. In this folder, I will put anything related to the course as a whole. So you see on there the syllabus and the course calendar. And I want to start by talking you through quickly the syllabus. I mean, the syllabus is meant to be something for you to read, so I simply want to point out some of the most important aspects of it relevant to you. The first, under general information, you can see my email posted there. Now, if you look me up in ASU's directory, you would probably know I have another ASU email address. I do want you to use kgary@email.asu.edu. You know, tough to explain, but ASU has more than one email system. This email system I use for my classes. I know it's where my students will contact me. Additionally, I prefer when you give me a subject line saying online 316 student, so I can be responsive to you, as opposed to being buried in the wealth of other emails that I get from the university and other places from my other email accounts. So it is to your benefit, it's to our benefit to communicate better if you use the kgary@email.asu.edu email address listed there. The course, as you know, is an online course, so it runs in the 7-week, 2-day format. Basically, I've planned out 7 weeks of course activities and reserved the last 2 days for posting a final online exam, which you will have February 29th and March 1st. My office hours are listed there. They are Arizona time, so please map accordingly for wherever you are. Realize that Arizona is currently MST. It's 1 hour ahead of California time. It's 2 hours behind New York time. But when daylight savings switches over, we'll be 3 hours different from New York and on the same time zone as California. I mean, that's Arizona's peculiar in that way. So realize that my office hours will stay at these times, but may shift relative to where you are during and basically around spring break. It's useful to know my office hours so you can contact me on Skype. I will make sure I am on Skype during my office hours, so you can call me up. You're also welcome to call me up on Skype anytime that you see I'm online. If for some reason I am not responding to you, most likely it's because I have another student in front of me, is the only reason. On my office hours is also time when I intend to answer emails, be on discussion forums, things of that nature. So you'll find me to be more responsive during those times. In terms of the course itself, prerequisites, you should have all taken CST315. I know many of you just came from the prior first offering of it with Ruben, and I've talked extensively with him about that course and what you produced. Also realize CST315 is a course that I developed. I designed that course, so a lot of the content that you went through was content that I developed for Ruben. CST230, which actually should be updated to SCR222, is a data structures course. You should, my expectation as a software construction, software coding course is that you are a programmer competent to the level of someone who successfully passed data structures and algorithms and did so in Java. Java is the core language of the course. You will see when we get to the labs, when we get to the project exercises, that I'll expect that level of competency in Java programming. Our projects will be all Java. And when we get to the project kickoff in the second week of the course, I'll do some explanation as to why I have some constraints around what you'll be working in Java, nature of the code, and so forth. Back to the course, there's a description there, but really give you an idea of the course and program outcomes. Hopefully you are aware of your degree program outcomes. You have 8 of them, or 8 categories of them, from technical competence to design, problem solving,
communication, and so forth. As an instructor, I need to inform you how this course maps into those degree program outcomes, how it helps you along on your degree path. So again, I'm not going to read these course outcomes, but that table is meant to explain that mapping, if you will. And certainly if you have any questions on that, that's something you can reach out to me directly, or we can also have a conversation on the discussion forums on Blackboard. Let's talk about what's actually in the course. This is a course on software construction. This course, to me, this is one of my favorite courses, if not my favorite course. I've been teaching it for 12 years here. I created this course because I spent time in industry um, as an as a team lead and a software architect, where I worked with a lot of junior developers, and I was kind of surprised they were coming out of with computer science degrees, and a lot of them had kind of book knowledge of software engineering, but didn't understand some of the kind of the daily tools and practices that the developers use every day, and some of them you see here. So I wanted to create a course around the craft of creating quality code. As I mentioned in the first video, software engineering, there's a lot that goes into engineering. There's a lot of design work. There's a lot of verification, validation. All these kinds of things are important. But at the end of the day, it's about producing quality code. So if you are the developer, you are writing the code, you have an ethical responsibility individually and in the context of your team to produce great code. So this tries to further you along beyond what you learn in, say, a data structures course or in the programming exercises that you take in your other courses, to learn specific techniques, practices, tools for writing better code. So you see several of these topics are tied to that. So for example, we'll do unit testing, we'll talk about code reviews, we'll talk about refactoring, static analysis tools, these kinds of things. They will all help you write better code. Another thing you would see among those topics, if you read carefully, you'll see the first one, agile software development. You'll see techniques like continuous integration and testing, very popular in the agile community. You will do projects in agile. We will cover an agile topic almost every week in the course. Agile is the predominant software development lifecycle model in use nowadays. The latest study I heard was 88% of projects using Agile, um, and so you will do Agile and you'll practice these quality coding techniques in the context of Agile projects. Okay. Um, Other logistic information in terms of your textbook. You do have a required textbook. It is Somerville's ninth edition of software engineering. Um, the This is a book that you should already have. This is a textbook we decided to adopt across the 6 software enterprise courses, from SCR 215 all the way up through SCR 416. We do realize fully it's an expensive book, and that's why we wanted to try and adopt a common textbook across all these courses. If you have the ninth edition, if you already have it in your possession, you'll be fine with that. Realize Somerville just came out with a 10th edition. In fact, I've got it, a book copy on order. It does have some updated Agile information in it, so I look forward to reading it. If you don't have the textbook yet and you intend on purchasing Somerville's text, I would go ahead and get the 10th edition. I don't think there's anything that you're going to miss from the ninth edition, so you might as well get the newest version. I have a recommended book on there of Code Complete 2. There are certain books that software developers tend to have on their bookshelf, and Code Complete 2 is one of them. It is not required that you purchase it. It is not a book I'm going to assign a reading out of like I will with Somerville. But it is, if your desire is to be a great coder and move forward in coding, I do suggest getting the the McConnell Code Complete 2 book. Grading, you see the grading categories there. Some of this will make sense, I think, a little bit more after I talk about the modules and so forth. Some of the terminology here may not make that much sense. Realize though, during the semester you will do a team-based project. There will be a grading criteria specific to the project that will be handed out to you on the project kickoff. You'll have labs due just about every week, and on a specific quality coding practice. So those will be graded with a total of 30%.
there will be a process. Essentially, the things that you do in lab, you'll be asked to incorporate those things back into your project. Um, how you do that, where you do that, how well you do it, that is what that 20% is about. And again, that's going to be talked about when we talk about the project. But basically, we'll do things like you'll write a unit test in a lab, but then you'll have to turn around and do a unit test in your project code base. You'll have to explain, why you did it for that, the code that you chose, and what improvements you saw. Well, hopefully improvements that you saw by applying that quality coding practice. And then, yes, there will be an online final exam February 29th, March 1st, worth 20% of the grade. Um, this is a project-centric class. Um, I'm going to dedicate an entire video in the second week to a project kickoff. There will be activities for you to help form teams and so forth. I know you've done some of this in the previous courses before. I have kind of my own way to do of doing it, but it should feel familiar. Um, and as I said, there's a specific grading criteria for the projects themselves. That kind of gives you an overview. You'll get a project grade. It'll be in part based on what you produce, part based on what you produce from a software development lifecycle, specifically agile perspective, um, as well as this notion of consistent effort throughout the semester. And I'm going to talk a bit about that in the next video because that's one of the course policies. So again, something that perhaps doesn't make much sense now, but will as you watch the next videos. You will be doing labs each week on the quality practices. Part of those labs will be paper and pencil. So some of them are, if you will, the conceptual or theoretical work of applying a quality practice. But then you'll practice it also as well in a specific software tool, unit testing in JUnit, static analysis in PMD and find bugs, things like this. And we'll give you each one of those tools. We'll give you an introductory video walking you through them, and then ask you to apply them on a particular sample code base. The process part I mentioned, after you do those labs, you'll be expected to turn around and do each one of these topics in the context of your project. And you'll be scored on at least 5 of them within the context of your project, and you'll have to tell us where those things are in your project. So again, more of that will be talked about in the second week when we kick off the project. And as I mentioned, there will be an exam. I do reserve the right to post quizzes as well based on your module activity. I kind of do that on an ad hoc basis. If I do, that will be counted as part of the process grade. It says module grade there, but that's basically the process grade. Expectations and responsibilities. Again, this is the exact same course as the on-campus students, but we have some practical constraints. The faster pace that you're asked to go through this material, as well as this asynchronous, me talking to you via video, you working with your teammates in an asynchronous fashion, meaning discussions, email, and so forth. So there's some practical considerations that'll be made for the labs and for the projects and how we execute them. Some more specific stuff, grade appeals. You do have the right to appeal a grade in writing. Basically, when you have a lab due every week, I've already met with the TAs and set an expectation that we turn lab material around to as fast as we possibly can. Realize we have 130 students in the 316 sections, but our goal is to try and return things within 3 days and get those grades posted with feedback, so you understand how you're doing on things. Realize from the point that we post the grades until 1 week later, if you want to appeal a grade, if you don't agree with the grade you have, then you need to write me an email, and you need to be very specific. What it is that you're appealing. Don't ask for a general regrade or anything like that. You need to say things like, "Hey, on lab activity 2, You asked for me to specify what the code coverage was for the white box test. I did it. I said it was this. I think that's correct. I was taking, points were deducted. I don't understand why, or perhaps the grader missed it or whatnot. And I will respond to all appeals personally, but I will only respond to them within a week. I'm not going to in on March 1st when you're finishing your exam and you're in a panic about your grade, go back and regrade something from February 1st. The window is passed, so please be timely with that. I've used this has been always been my appeals policy, and it's worked pretty well. And then finally, cheating and ethics policy. And I'm going to spend a moment on this because even the first time I taught online, I noticed some things that were unique to the online environment. But cheating happens in face-to-face classes as well. It's not an online phenomenon. Um, Realize that I have a zero tolerance policy for cheating. If I catch you cheating, I reserve the right to fail you immediately from the course with an EX grade. And realize that the Fulton Schools of Engineering has a two-strike policy on such grades, and you can get kicked out of the program. Now, what constitutes cheating? Um, in the broad sense, I say it there. Cheating is presenting someone else's work as your own. What does that mean? Well, first, it obviously means that if you take another student's work and turn it in with your name on it, whether that other student is aware or not, that's cheating. If you give your work to another student to turn in under their name as a favor to them, that's cheating. But it's also broader than that. We see more and more instances of students going out to the internet using Google, grabbing code from code repositories, going to Stack Overflow, grabbing code, and turning it in as their own. That's particularly tempting in programming courses like this one. Now realize, real world programmers every day. I mean, when I'm coding on my research projects and so forth, I mean, I use Stack Overflow. I'm very familiar with Google, just like you are. Um, it's natural to go look for reusable solutions, but realize that there's a difference between finding a solution and taking that solution and calling it your own. When you take code off of Stack Overflow and you turn it in with your name on it, but you don't put in your solution that, hey, I got this from Stack Overflow and here's the URL for that I got it from. And furthermore, when you use it without permission, meaning you didn't contact the author of code, say you took it from an open source repository, you are one, cheating, two, committing an ethical violation, and three, possibly committing a criminal violation. Um, you're here to learn. You're here to learn by doing. I'm not interested in reading solutions that you found from somewhere else. I'm interested in um, you being able to produce the solution on your own. Um, Realize, I mean, I spent a long time as a software architect, as a software developer. I've read more code than you've probably written. Um, you know, I won't take it lightly if I catch you doing these kinds of things. We'll talk about it in the project. There will be instances, for example, in your project where there may be a third-party open source or a library with an appropriate license and copyright on it that would solve your problem. And yes, of course, you can use that. All right, but there will also be specific parts like in a lab exercise, for example, where I expect you've written it yourself, not gone and found help from somewhere else. And again, always, even when it's allowed for you to go use an open source solution or some other license appropriate solution on your project or whatnot, it's still something that you can't take the attribution for. The attribution belongs with the original author, and it must be that way. And if you violate that, I will consider that a cheating violation. You can get failed for that. All right. So, and again, best thing is ask if you're not sure. Dr. Gary, I found this code solves my problem. Can I use this? I'll let you know. Okay. Enough of that. There is a second part of ethics I want you to be aware of, and I'll talk more about this in the project. You will you're working in team-based projects. Not everybody in the course has the same programming competency. Not everybody learns the material as quickly as they can. However, when you work in a team, as you know, you rely on each other. And students get very nervous about their grade. Students that work in a team I've seen emotional responses to students mad at other students because they don't feel they're pulling their share weight. Um, you have a responsibility to be putting in the appropriate amount of effort, the amount of effort that I will specify for you in the project kickoff on your team-based project. Essentially, if you blow off your project, to me, that's not just an offense that will be a grade deduction, but it's something that I believe violates ASU and the Fulton Schools of Engineering's integrity policy, ethics violation. Um, you know, you really should not be putting your fellow classmates under duress by not participating in your projects. And I'll be very specific about what that means in the project kickoff. All right. So that's it for the syllabus. Already in this video, I went twice as long as I wanted to, but I did want to get all the way through it. I'm going to do one more faster video on course policies and Blackboard, and then we'll get right into the course material. Okay, this is the third video for CST316. This is the third introductory video. I'm going to try and make this the last one. I'm going to try and move through a little bit faster. In this video, I want to talk about how I'm going to lay out Blackboard, a bit about the course calendar, and then some of my policies for dealing with communication and so forth in the class. So let me jump right to it. First on Blackboard, you'll see a left-hand navigation with the main links that you're going to need to know, the ones under the red. Some of these, if you're will appear over time. But for the most part, these are the main navigation areas. I do use course announcements, and I tend to use them a fair amount. You'll normally get an email on anything I announce, if only and especially in an online course because we're asynchronous. There's no set meeting time. So if there's something I need to know and I think it needs to go, you need to see it right away. Maybe a correction to a lab, a change in a due date, Blackboard, well, I guess Blackboard now, I can't send an announcement. But essentially, anything I think you need to know right away, I'll do via an announcement and it should show up in your email inbox. Other communications will primarily happen over discussions in a discussion forum. So let me go to that. I know some instructors use the Prezi discussion forums, and Blackboard's discussion forums aren't the best, but it is what I'm using right now for this course, open for future feedback on that. I've already pre-populated the discussion board with 5 forums for general discussions, things related to your project. The modules, the specific quality practices we'll talk about in software. Things related to a lab, questions on the lab, you don't understand the instructions, some kind of clarification, additional information, whatnot, should go under that form. And then tool discussion. So we will talk about a number of software tools that you'll use. So if you're having a problem installing one, maybe you have an alternative tool to suggest, or really anything under that category will go under tool discussions. In Blackboard, the forums discussions are organized by thread. The particular one that I did something a little bit different is under the modules form. In the modules form, I've already preceded it with threads for each one of the modules that we will do in quality coding practices. You are not allowed in this particular forum to create your own threads. You'll have to get onto one of these, like say unit testing, that we do, which we'll do early in the semester, and you'll need to reply to add something to this thread, just so I can keep it focused on the modules and everyone can find what they're looking for. So I expect a particular thread to be active on a given week of the course, because each week you'll be focusing on a different module. Okay, other things on Blackboard, the modules themselves will go under the course modules link. What you'll find in each module, I'll put a folder there. That folder will have a specification of your reading for that module. It will have the lecture notes, hard copy of of the lecture notes that I use, as well as a link to the appropriate video for that module. They will be time released on a weekly basis. I know some students like it when instructors put kind of all the content out at once for them to go through. First of all, I don't have all that content because this is the first offering of the course. But second, I don't like to do it that way anyway. I'm going to talk quite a bit about the rhythm or cadence of the course, and even the face-to-face sections. I've always run it where you know we learn a concept, we practice it in the lab, we do it in a project, and it happens in a very regular, timely fashion. So part of the way I enforce that is I will be time releasing course modules week by week in the course. So every time you go out on at the beginning of the week, there'll be a new module present for you to start going through. And I'll talk about that quite a bit more here in a little bit too. Course policies and success guide are course documents that I put on the main link just so they're readily accessible to you. I'm going to talk about the course policies here in a minute. I think what I want to talk about next is the course calendar. And this is where we'll get a better sense of that rhythm I talked about. This course runs for 7 weeks and 2 days. What will happen in this course, and hopefully the resolution's large enough on here, what will happen is each week on a Monday, I will release the next module. Normally, I'll make it time released at 6 p.m. on Monday. Normally, I'll even put it out there earlier, frankly, a day or two before that. Giving myself Monday at 6 p.m. because that's when my day ends here, and my face-to-face teaching responsibilities are done, so I can get to get the module out there. And again, the module will have a reading assignment, perhaps a tutorial, video, and PDFs of the lecture notes associated with them, and a lab. I should mention the lab. So you see, it kind of goes in a rhythm. So for example, let me jump down to January 25th. On Monday the 25th at 6 p.m., I'll release the week 3 module. The week 3 module will have a lab assignment associated with it that will be due on February 1st, 1 week later, at midnight. So basically 11:59 p.m. is when the labs are all due. I'll talk about the late policy in a minute, but effectively when your lab's due, we spend the week grading it. We hope to get it back to you by the end of the week. That week 3 module's due, but at the same time we'll be releasing week 4. You'll work on week 4, and the next week in February, the week 4 module will be due, and the week 5 will come out, and so forth. So go in this this regular rhythm or cadence, as it's called. We'll talk when we talk Agile. We'll talk quite a bit about the notion of cadence. Cadence is just a fancy word for rhythm. It is the intent of the course, both in terms of how you develop software, but also how you learn and conduct the course, to do things in that regular rhythm or cadence. I will expect a consistent work effort and learning effort throughout the 7 weeks of the course, and I time release the materials as a mechanism to try and enforce that. A few things, other things pointed out in the calendar. On the 18th is actually a university holiday. So that's why the week 2 module and the week 1 due date are pushed back a day. Again, I'll probably have that module out there well before that. So think of that availability as kind of the latest time it'll be available. But since it is MLK Day on January 18th, technically the university is on holiday. I can't make something due. I can't technically put things out there for you. But again, it'll probably be there. You'll also see in places on the calendar things related to the project, and I don't know in Blackboard's calendars how to color code this different, but effectively the project kickoff, what your project is, what your team is, the start of Agile sprints will start on January 19th when we come back from MLK Day, and then every 2 weeks ending Sunday at midnight you'll have a sprint end, and then the next minute, Monday, I should go to February, the sprint 1 ends, and then the sprint 2 starts. All right, so you're going to go through this iterative development known as sprints in the Agile Scrum methodology. They are going to be 2 week sprints, and they will start on Mondays and they will end on Sundays, right up to the end of the course, February 28th. So you're going to do 3 sprints, and I will talk specifically about what the deliverables are at the end of each sprint, the planning exercises you'll do for the next sprint, as well as the tools that we will use to support this agile style of development when we get to the project kickoff on January 19th. All right. So that's a calendar view. It's out there on top level link for your reference, so you kind of know where you are in the course at any time. In terms of policies, and why don't I stick on the calendar view? If you notice, I did kind of gloss over this notion of a late deadline. Um, one of the things on my course policies that I also posted at the top level. Let me get this to go full screen. And there's a lot of text here. This isn't meant for me to present to you in a video format. This is meant for you to read through. I already talked about the calendar here. But effectively on this calendar, one of the places that you want to take a look at is the, let's see if I can highlight this, the late policy on homework assignments. And this applies to the lab assignments with each module. Basically, you're going to have a lab assignment due every Monday at midnight, except for the first and last weeks. My late policy is if you can't get it done, you can use, you have a one-time homework pass that will give you a free 3-day late pass. Basically, that's why you see the late deadline on the calendar as Thursday at midnight. You basically get one free pass to say I need an extra 3 days to get this lab done. Because things kind of come up in life, I know. Now, once you use that late pass, and basically that means you'll get no penalty for turning in something late. What happens if you're late a second time? Well, if you're late a second time, then you start losing 10 points a day. That's basically what number 4 is down here. Oop, I just circled number 3. That's what number 4 is. You can still submit things late each week by Thursday at midnight, but realize as every day turns, you lose 10% of the lab grade. So it's not a habit that you want to get into. We're very aware, and it's very difficult in the online format. One of to me, the biggest challenge in the online format is you're taking a very busy course in 7 weeks. If you start to get on the wrong side of the slippery slope and fall behind, it is going to be disastrous for this class. I do expect you're going through the material on a weekly basis. I expect you're turning in the labs, and then I expect you're making progress on your project. That's a lot going on all at once. You're going to be reading, you're going to be reviewing these videos, you're going to be working on labs, and then you're going to be working on a project. So that's a fair number of chainsaws to be juggling at one time, and I'm aware of that, and I am trying to encourage you, to keep up in the class. But the late policy is there for you to at least have a little bit of an out, because life does happen and things are hectic. So please review that particular part of this policy document under calendar very carefully. Please ask me any questions on it. While I've skipped to this particular section of the document as well, let me talk about another aspect of calendar. Realize that there's an expectation anytime you take a college course of an amount of time you're probably going to spend on that course. And often in computing related degrees, particularly degrees where you have a lot of programming, the degree can be time intensive. Programming takes time. Even programming that isn't hard can take time. You got to type all the stuff in. Stupid errors happen that you have to troubleshoot. Been there, done that. And next thing you know, hours have melted away. Please plan accordingly for that. I am very aware that that is even more challenging because you are in a 7-week class. And I do this for the face-to-face class, and I kind of calculated it out What I'm talking about is this part up in number 2. Let me see if I can kind of get to that. Why am hang on. I'm working on a digitizer here that I'm not quite used to. Um, Let me clear all the highlighting. What I'm talking about is um, this one right here, number 2. All right. In there, I start off saying you are expected to do 21 to 28 hours per week on this course. I'm sure that sounds like a lot, but I did work it out. I give you the mathematics of it there. My face-to-face students take this course in 15 weeks, and they are expected to spend 9 hours outside of class on this course. They also spend 4 hours with me in lecture and lab formats. So all told, um, they spend close to 200 hours over that time with me. You take that 200 hours and you put it into 7 weeks, and you get to 28 hours a week pretty rapidly. And again, you're promised the same course. That's the course I'm going to deliver for you. So I don't see any other way around it. Um, I'll try and make some practical adjustments because that does sound like a lot of time, but I want to set the expectations up front. That 21 to 28 hours a week is expected, and is expected on a regular basis. It's not, jammed through in 50 hours one week and no time the next week. It is a consistent effort over the 7 weeks of that 21 to 28 hours, doing those various activities I talked about. And again, something I'm fully willing to talk about, but that's kind of how the calculus works out on it. Let me do a quick time check how long. I've already gone 15 minutes in this video, so I'm going to stop this one here. I think the rest of this those were the most important parts of this document I wanted to talk about. The rest of this document is important as well. In particular, please read the communication part very carefully. It explains to you, the priority you have for me responding to you. How responsive we'll try and be, as well as policies on your behavior online and discussion forums and so forth. So please read that carefully and use the discussion forums if you have any questions. And then I have an ethics policy, which I talked about a bit with the syllabus, and again is expanded on here that I'd like you to go to as well. Um, uh, and some of the stuff on the modules and project, but again, there's going to be, I'm really going to spend time on the modules and project when I do the project kickoff video in the second week. That will talk specifically about, the relationship of the modules, the coding best practices you learn, and the project, and how those things wire together, and what you need to do, um, as well as what we do to help wire them together. This is it for the introductory videos. They've gone a bit longer. I beg your forgiveness. The online form, as I said, is new to me. I'll try and be more concise as I present the material in the class. But I wanted to make sure you're aware of everything up front, and please post the discussion forums if you have questions on any of these policies, anything on the syllabus, or anything else you need to know to be successful in the course. And next video, we'll jump right into our first modules. We'll start kind of with a mini Agile software process boot camp, with the expectation that will get you ready for the project kickoff on January 19th.